This is the story of Johan, a man whose existence had, for decades, been painted in the muted tones of routine and quiet service. It is a story not just about money, but about the immeasurable value of a single, silent act of kindness, and how that echo of generosity resonated through time to transform a life beyond imagining. Our journey begins in a small, cramped apartment, perched high in a building that had long since surrendered its youthful gleam to the relentless march of time. The plaster cracked like ancient parchment across the ceiling, maps of neglect charting forgotten histories. Sunlight, when it deigned to visit, was filtered through grimy window panes, casting weak, jaundiced rectangles across faded linoleum. This was Johan's world, a universe meticulously ordered by habit, where the squeak of the aging floorboards and the distant rumble of city traffic were his constant, solitary companions. Every morning, Johan awoke not to an alarm, but to an internal clock calibrated by half a century of rising before dawn. His hands, gnarled and textured like old oak by years of labor, would instinctively reach for the threadbare robe draped over a rickety chair. The ritual was inviolable: a lukewarm shower, the faint aroma of instant coffee brewing in a chipped mug, and a single slice of toast, often eaten in contemplative silence, punctuated only by the soft tick-tock of a grandfather clock, a relic from a time when life moved at a more deliberate pace. Johan was a man forged in the crucible of a bygone era, a time when loyalty was a currency more valuable than gold, and integrity was the bedrock of a man's character. He had dedicated 47 years of his life to Sterling Industries, a name once synonymous with innovation and engineering excellence. From a young apprentice, wide-eyed and eager to absorb the wisdom of the machines, he had risen through the ranks, his hands intimately familiar with every cog, every bolt, every intricate mechanism that brought their complex machinery to life. The factory floor was his cathedral, the rhythmic clang of metal his prayer, the smell of oil and sweat a perfume of purpose. He had witnessed the company's golden age, celebrated its triumphs, and silently endured its periods of uncertainty. His colleagues respected him, not for grand speeches, but for his unwavering dedication, his encyclopedic knowledge, and his quiet, unshakable work ethic. He was the unsung hero, the man who knew how to fix anything, the steady hand in any storm. Retirement had arrived not with a fanfare, but with a whimper, a polite handshake, and a modest pension that barely kept pace with the rising cost of living. Suddenly, the structured rhythm of his days was replaced by an echoing void. The factory, once alive with the hum of machinery and camaraderie, was now a silent monument in his memory. Johan found solace in routine, daily walks to the local park, where he'd sit on a familiar bench, feeding crumbs to pigeons, watching the world rush by, a silent observer in his own fading existence. He felt, at times, like a ghost in his own life, a forgotten relic of an industrial past. His financial struggles were a constant, dull ache, a persistent whisper of anxiety. Medical bills accumulated, the cost of heating gnawed at his meager savings, and the dream of a comfortable old age had long since dissolved into the harsh reality of making ends meet. Yet, through it all, Johan maintained a quiet dignity, a stoic acceptance of his lot. He never complained, never sought pity. He simply endured, a testament to the resilient spirit that had carried him through decades of hard work and quiet sacrifice. But life, as it often does, held an unexpected twist, a dramatic crescendo waiting to interrupt the quiet symphony of Johan's solitude. This twist, however, wasn't born of chance, but of a seed planted decades earlier, an act of kindness so profound and so understated that it had almost been lost to the annals of corporate history. To understand this turning point, we must rewind the clock to a particularly tumultuous period for Sterling Industries, a moment when the very foundations of the company trembled on the brink of collapse. The year was 1987. A global recession had hit manufacturing hard, and Sterling Industries, once a titan, was struggling to adapt. Their flagship product, a revolutionary new hydraulic press system, was plagued by a critical design flaw, discovered just weeks before a make-or-break international exhibition. The flaw was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it rendered the entire prototype unstable and potentially dangerous. Millions had been invested, and the company's future hinged on this single product. Morale was at an all-time low. Engineers worked around the clock, fueled by caffeine and desperation, but no one could pinpoint the precise issue. The stress was palpable, a suffocating cloud hanging over the factory. Layoffs were imminent, and the once vibrant atmosphere was replaced by hushed anxieties and the constant fear of the axe falling. It was during this dark hour that Mr. Alastair Sterling, the company's formidable founder and CEO, was at his most isolated. A man of immense vision and uncompromising standards, he had built Sterling Industries from the ground up, a testament to his relentless drive. He was respected, yes, but often feared, a distant, almost mythic figure who rarely descended to the factory floor, preferring to orchestrate his empire from the sterile confines of his top-floor office. But even he felt the immense pressure, the weight of hundreds of livelihoods resting on his shoulders. He stalked the prototype bay late into the night, a haunted look in his eyes, watching his engineers tear their hair out. Among the frantic flurry of activity, Johan, then a seasoned foreman, moved with his usual quiet deliberation. He wasn't one for grand pronouncements or dramatic gestures. His approach was systematic, methodical, rooted in decades of hands-on experience. While others focused on complex simulations and theoretical models, Johan spent his nights in the dimly lit workshop, dismantling, examining, and reassembling the flawed prototype piece by painstaking piece. He didn't clock out. He didn't ask for overtime. He simply stayed, driven by an innate loyalty to the company that had been his life's work. His wife, bless her patient soul, would bring him thermos flasks of strong tea and sandwiches, silently understanding the silent war he was waging. One particularly cold Tuesday, after days of continuous, exhaustive work, Johan stumbled upon it. It wasn't a software glitch, nor a material fatigue, but a minuscule, almost invisible structural imbalance in a subassembly bearing, caused by a manufacturing deviation from a new supplier. A defect so tiny it escaped automated checks. It was the kind of flaw that only a man who had felt the weight of every component in his hands, who understood the subtle language of stress and strain, could ever detect. The solution required a custom-fabricated part, an alloy with a specific tensile strength that was almost impossible to source on such short notice. The company's budget was already stretched thin, and ordering a custom part would take weeks, missing the exhibition deadline. Panic could have set in, but Johan, with a flash of desperate inspiration, remembered an old, experimental alloy sample he had carefully hoarded in his personal workshop at home, a remnant from a forgotten project years ago. It was exactly what was needed. But there was a catch. He had purchased that alloy himself, years ago, with a small inheritance from his own grandmother, a sentimental piece of his personal history. The cost of fabricating the part using a specialized artisan on a rush job, without company approval, would fall entirely on him. He knew the risk. He could lose his job, his savings, everything. But he also knew that if the company failed, hundreds would lose their livelihoods, including himself. And something deeper, an unspoken vow of loyalty, stirred within him. Without a moment's hesitation, he made his decision. He didn't inform Mr. Sterling, fearing delays or objections. He didn't seek credit. He simply acted. He pulled an all-nighter, meticulously machining the new component himself, his skilled hands working with a precision born of urgency and years of practice. He then discreetly replaced the faulty part in the prototype, ensuring no one else noticed the subtle exchange. When the prototype was retested the next morning, it ran flawlessly. The issue was gone. No one knew why. The engineers celebrated, convinced their late-night tweaks had finally paid off. Mr. Sterling, a rare smile gracing his stern features, clapped his engineers on the back, declaring the project saved. He attributed it to collective effort and sheer perseverance. Only Johan knew the truth of what had transpired, and he carried that secret with the same quiet dignity with which he carried his daily burdens. He never spoke of his sacrifice, never mentioned the personal cost. He simply resumed his duties, the unsung hero, fading back into the machinery of the company. But Alastair Sterling was a shrewd man, a man who built his empire by observing the unspoken nuances of human behavior. He had watched Johan during those dark nights, noticed his relentless presence, his focused intensity, his absence from the celebratory toasts. He had quietly conducted his own inquiries, cross-referencing material orders, noticing the sudden, inexplicable resolution of the flaw. He knew, with an intuitive certainty, that Johan had played a pivotal, solitary role. He understood the profound, silent act of loyalty and self-sacrifice. He understood the unspoken code of honor that drove men like Johan. And in that moment, a seed of profound respect, of a quiet, enduring gratitude, was planted in Alastair Sterling's heart. It was a secret he carried, much like Johan carried his own, for decades. The years rolled by. Sterling Industries recovered, prospered, and eventually Alastair Sterling, a patriarch of industry, passed away peacefully in his sleep at the ripe old age of 92. The news was met with the usual corporate eulogies and respectful obituaries. Johan, in his small apartment, read the news in the morning paper, a faint sense of nostalgia washing over him. Another chapter closed. He thought little more of it. Then, a few weeks later, a crisp, formal envelope arrived in his mailbox. It bore the embossed crest of Thorne and Chambers LLP, solicitors at law, a name synonymous with old money and complex estates. Johan's heart gave a slight lurch. His first thought was a mistake, perhaps a forgotten bill, or worse, a summons. He rarely received mail of such gravitas. His hands trembled slightly as he opened it, revealing an official letter inviting him to the reading of the last will and testament of the late Mr. Alastair Sterling. Bewildered, Johan carefully placed the letter on his worn kitchen table. Why him? He was a retired foreman, a forgotten cog. He knew Mr. Sterling, of course, but their relationship had been purely professional, distant. Perhaps it was a token, a small gesture of recognition for his long service, a ceremonial plate or a framed certificate. He prepared himself for a polite but unremarkable formality. The day of the will reading dawned grey and overcast, mirroring Johan's trepidation. The offices of Thorne and Chambers were located in a towering glass and steel skyscraper in the heart of the city, a world away from Johan's modest neighborhood. The marble lobby gleamed, the air conditioned to a pristine chill. Johan felt acutely out of place, his best, albeit still worn, suit feeling stiff and unfamiliar. The receptionist, a young woman with impeccably coiffed hair, directed him to a grand conference room on the executive floor. As he entered, he found himself amidst a collection of individuals who clearly belonged to a different stratum of society. There was Alastair Sterling's estranged nephew, a slick, impeccably dressed man in his late 40s, Percy Sterling Blackwood, accompanied by his equally disdainful wife. They exuded an air of entitlement, their eyes constantly darting around, appraising the room, as if calculating their due. There were also a few stern-faced former board members and a distant cousin, all radiating an expectation of significant inheritances. Johan, feeling like an interloper, quietly took a seat in an inconspicuous corner, his presence barely acknowledged, certainly not welcomed. Percy cast a brief, dismissive glance in his direction, then returned to an animated whisper with his wife. Mr. Bartholomew Thorne, the senior partner, a man with silver hair, piercing blue eyes, and a voice like polished mahogany, entered the room. He carried a thick leather-bound folder, its contents holding the fate of Alastair Sterling's vast fortune. The atmosphere grew taut, charged with a mixture of anticipation and thinly veiled greed. Mr. Thorne began, his voice resonating through the silent room, detailing bequests to various charities, trusts, and minor beneficiaries. Percy and his wife exchanged impatient glances, clearly waiting for the main event, the grand unveiling of their rightful inheritance. Then, Mr. Thorne paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, finally resting on Johan. A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. And now, he announced, his voice carrying a new, deliberate weight, we come to a most significant and, I dare say, unexpected provision. To Mr. Jonathan Johan Miller. Johan flinched, a small, involuntary movement. All eyes in the room, previously dismissive, now swiveled towards him, a collective gasp rippling through the air. Percy Sterling Blackwood's jaw visibly dropped. Mr. Thorne continued, his words slow and clear, each one landing like a gavel stroke. Mr. Alastair Sterling, in his final wishes, stipulated a profound recognition of Mr. Miller's unwavering loyalty and an act of selflessness that, in his words, saved my legacy and the livelihoods of hundreds. He often spoke of a time of crisis for Sterling Industries, and of an individual whose quiet dedication and ingenious, selfless sacrifice averted certain disaster, without ever seeking recognition. Mr. Thorne then read directly from the will, Alastair Sterling's own voice, in a sense, echoing from the grave, to Jonathan Miller, a man of unparalleled integrity and the truest heart I have ever known, I bequeath not merely a sum, but an acknowledgement of true worth. I leave him 75% of my personal liquid assets, including my entire stock portfolio in Sterling Industries, valued at approximately $250 million US. Furthermore, I bequeath to him full ownership of my primary residence, the Sterling Manor estate, and a lifetime annuity to ensure his comfort and prosperity, free from financial worry. The words hung in the air, suspended in a thick silence that was soon shattered by Percy Sterling Blackwood's enraged cry. 250 million. The manor? This is preposterous. An old foreman? It's a trick. He manipulated my uncle. His face was crimson, veins throbbing in his temples. His wife shrieked, echoing his outrage. Johann, however, remained utterly still. His mind, unable to process the sheer enormity of the numbers, simply shut down. The world seemed to tilt, the polished mahogany table blurring before his eyes. It wasn't the money that overwhelmed him, not initially. It was the words. Unwavering loyalty, act of selflessness, saved my legacy, truest heart I have ever known. Mr. Sterling had known. He had seen. He had remembered. A single tear, unbidden, traced a path down Johann's weathered cheek, a testament not to joy, but to a profound, heart-wrenching validation that transcended any material value. He felt, in that moment, not just rich, but seen, truly seen, for the first time in perhaps his entire life. Mr. Thorne, with calm authority, quelled Percy's outburst, explaining the ironclad legal framework of the will, which left no room for dispute. The old man, Alastair Sterling, had been meticulous, ensuring his final wishes were unassailable. He had known the storm this would unleash, and he had prepared for it. Johann was escorted out, still in a daze, leaving behind a room filled with venomous whispers and simmering resentment. The world outside, the bustling city, seemed brighter, louder, impossibly vibrant, yet utterly unreal. The days that followed were a blur of overwhelming paperwork, financial consultations, and the slow, arduous process of coming to terms with an unimaginable reality. Johann, who had spent his life meticulously budgeting pennies, was now grappling with millions. He found himself walking through the opulent halls of Sterling Manor, its grandeur a stark contrast to his humble apartment. Each room, with its antique furniture and priceless art, felt alien, a gilded cage rather than a comfortable home. He still ate his modest meals in the vast, echoing dining room, feeling the phantom presence of generations of Sterlings. The weight of the gold was immense, but the weight of the memory of Alastair Sterling's words, his quiet acknowledgement, was heavier still, a profound and unexpected burden of gratitude. His initial reaction was not exuberance, but a deep-seated humility and a sense of unease. Did he truly deserve this? He, Johann Miller, the quiet foreman. Guilt gnawed at him, the feeling of having been elevated beyond his station, of receiving something too grand for his simple existence. He remembered the struggling families in his old neighborhood, the colleagues who had been laid off, the quiet desperation in their eyes. This wealth, this sudden, blinding fortune, felt almost sacrilegious in its enormity when viewed against the backdrop of so much quiet suffering. Mr. Thorne, sensing Johann's profound discomfort, became not just his lawyer, but a confidant, guiding him through the labyrinthine world of wealth management. He recounted stories of Alastair Sterling's quiet philanthropy, his deep respect for hard work, and his regret at not acknowledging Johann sooner. Mr. Sterling carried a quiet admiration for you, Johann, Thorne explained softly one afternoon, over tea in the manor's grand library. He saw beyond the balance sheets, beyond the corporate ladder. He saw the heart of the company, beating in the hands of men like you. This isn't just a reward, it's a correction, a testament to the value he truly placed on integrity and unspoken loyalty. Slowly, painstakingly, Johann began to understand. This wasn't just about him. It was about a principle. It was about Alastair Sterling's final, profound statement on what truly mattered in life. And with that understanding came a new sense of purpose, a gentle transformation that began to ripple through his very being. The money was not an end, but a means. A tool. Johann's first act, after ensuring his own financial security and setting up a trust for his few remaining distant relatives, was not to buy a sports car or a yacht. Instead, he meticulously researched and then quietly acquired the struggling factory building where Sterling Industries had first begun, the very place where he had spent his life. He didn't reopen it for profit. Instead, he transformed it into a state-of-the-art vocational training center, dedicated to teaching young people the skilled trades, engineering, machining, robotics, programming. He named it the Alastair Sterling and Johann Miller Institute for Industrial Arts. He wanted to honor Sterling's vision, but also to provide a future for those who, like him, found dignity and purpose in working with their hands. He personally oversaw the curriculum, ensuring that the emphasis was not just on technical skills, but on the values of loyalty, integrity, and the often unseen quiet dedication that had defined his own life. He funded scholarships for disadvantaged youth, ensuring that talent, not economic background, was the sole criterion for entry. He created an endowment that guaranteed free healthcare for all former Sterling Industries employees, a silent nod to the company's past, and a quiet remedy for the anxieties he himself had once faced. He invested in local community projects, revitalizing parks, funding libraries, and supporting initiatives for the elderly, always anonymously, always quietly, mirroring the silent act of kindness that had defined his own initial contribution. Johann's personal life also found a new, gentle rhythm. He hired a small, discreet staff for the manor, treating them with a respect that surprised them. He still preferred simple meals, but now he shared them with newfound friends, old colleagues he reconnected with, and the eager young students from the institute who often sought his counsel. He traveled, not to exotic resorts, but to places he had always dreamed of seeing, the great engineering marvels of the world, the ancient libraries, the historical sites that spoke of human ingenuity and resilience. He soaked in knowledge, a lifelong learner, his eyes now sparkling with a gentle wisdom that transcended his years. The media, having initially hounded him, eventually retreated, frustrated by his lack of ostentation and his refusal to sensationalize his story. Johann had nothing to prove, nothing to boast about. He simply lived, with a quiet grace and a profound sense of purpose. He found joy in the growth of his students, in the revitalization of his community, in the quiet satisfaction of knowing he was making a difference. The old foreman, once a forgotten ghost, had become a beacon of hope, a testament to the enduring power of character. His old apartment, the one with the cracked plaster, he transformed into a small, private museum, a humble tribute to the working man, filled with old tools, faded blueprints, and photographs of the factory in its heyday. It was a physical reminder of where he came from, and a symbol of the journey he had undertaken. When people visited the institute, they would often see Johann, not in a grand office, but in the workshops, his hands occasionally helping a student with a tricky repair, his eyes reflecting a deep contentment. He was still Johann, the foreman, but now, he was also Johann, the visionary, the philanthropist, the man who understood that true wealth lay not in what you accumulated, but in what you gave, and in the quiet, profound impact of unseen kindness. This is a story that reminds us that some of the greatest legacies aren't built on grand gestures, but on the silent, unwavering integrity of a single individual. It reminds us that kindness, though often unseen, possesses an echoing power that can transform not just one life, but many. It's a testament to the fact that true worth is often overlooked, only to be recognized by those with the wisdom to truly see. Johann's incredible journey, a testament to the quiet strength within us all, makes us ponder the profound narratives that shape our world. If this story, a powerful reminder of the enduring magic of the human spirit, resonated with you, if it sparked a thought about the unseen heroes in your own life, then please, take a moment to subscribe. Join our community as we continue to uncover these profound narratives, stories that remind us of the incredible potential for good that lies within each of us. Hit that subscribe button and become part of our journey to explore more tales of transformation and resilience.